Welcome, explorers and seekers of lost knowledge. Have you ever heard of a soldier who continued fighting in World War II until 29 years after it ended? Can you imagine not knowing that a war had ended and continuing to fight for almost 3 decades? In this video, we'll explore the incredible story of the soldier who continued to fight in World War II because he had no idea it was over. What would drive a person to continue fighting in a war long after it ended? And how did he finally discover that the war had ended? Stick with us to the end of the video to find out. Let's delve right in. Norio Suzuki, an explorer, was on a mission. He had left Japan because he was tired of living there and was resolved to find a man who many thought had been dead for a long time. Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda was the guy in question. He was an intelligence officer of the Imperial Japanese Army who had been dispatched to the island of Lubang in 1944 to prevent an impending Allied assault. Why did Suzuki decide to leave his house and travel across the Lubang jungles in quest of this specific Japanese soldier? Because it was 1974, nearly 30 years after the end of the Second World War, and Lieutenant Onoda was obstinately continuing to fight in it. Onoda was born in Kamikawa Village, Kais District, Wakayama Prefecture, Japan, of March 19th of 1922. He started working for Tajima Yoko Trading in Wuhan, China when he was 17 years old. He joined the Imperial Japanese Army Infantry when he was 18 years old. He was sent to the Nakano School, a Tokyo area training center with a focus on producing elite commando groups. Onoda received training in martial arts, history, philosophy, clandestine operations, and guerrilla tactics at this facility. In December 1944, it was decided that Lieutenant Onoda's unique skills would be best utilized in the Philippines as the tide of war started to shift against Japan. Onoda arrived on the island of Lubang as the Americans were getting ready to invade. His instructions were clear: destroy the island's harbors and airports so that Allied forces couldn't use them. Onoda was disappointed to learn that the superior officers he spoke with after arriving at Lubang had different plans. They contended that they would require those harbors and airports to evacuate their forces. Onoda was instructed to assist with the impending evacuation rather than be permitted to carry out the orders he had been given in Japan. The majority of the Japanese soldiers defending the island were quickly killed, taken prisoner, or managed to flee when the invasion eventually occurred on February 28, 1945. Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, Onoda's commanding officer, gave the young lieutenant an order that would alter the direction of his life as he prepared to leave the island on his own. Taniguchi advised Onoda to continue fighting and never give up. The major assured him, "We'll come back for you no matter what happens. It might take 3 years, it might take 5. Onoda trusted him to be sincere. When did the Japanese soldiers surrender in World War II? How many enlisted soldiers were with Onoda during his mission? These are the questions we're going to answer next, but before we continue, make sure to subscribe to History Flicks and dig up that bell icon so you won't miss any of our historical updates. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered, but not Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda. Along with 3 enlisted men, Private Ichi Akatsu, Private First Class Kinchichi Kozuka, and Corporal Shichi Shimada, Onoda had already entered the dense forest of Lubang. They intended to disturb the adversary as much as they could there. It was irrelevant that there was no longer an opponent. The 4 men first learned of their nation's capitulation in October 1945, when a different cell of renegade troops camped out in the mountains gave them a leaflet informing them that the war had already been finished for some time. The leaflet pleaded with the people to come down from the mountains. Onoda dismissed the leaflet with suspicion, just as he had done with another that had been dropped over the island and contained a general's order to surrender from the 14th Area Army. Onoda, who had received training in propaganda, thoroughly analyzed the pamphlet and deemed it to be fake. No American forgery, in his opinion, would prevent him from following the orders that had been issued to him. In September 1949, Akats decided to leave the organization after growing increasingly doubtful that the war might indeed be over. Before finally submitting to the Filipinos in 1950, he was left alone in the forest for 6 months. The following year, Private Shimada was shot in the leg during a raid and was nursed back to health by Onoda, but was later shot dead by a search party. In the 1970s, soldiers continued fighting in difficult conditions in the jungle. In 1972, a police search party encountered them, and in a gun battle, one soldier was killed and another, Onoda, was left alone. Despite harsh conditions, Onoda continued to carry out orders given 25 years prior and did not give up. Onoda and Kozuka survived on a jungle diet and missed major events in history such as the Korean War, the Beatles, John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King assassinations, the Berlin Wall, and the moon landing, living in their world thinking it was still World War II, causing trouble for villagers and the police. The Japanese government was startled to learn about Kozuka's passing. After Shimada's passing in 1954, both troops had been pronounced dead for quite some time. The general belief was that the two remaining soldiers could not possibly be alive after all this time. The authorities realized Lieutenant Onoda was probably still alive when Kozuka's body was taken back to Japan, but how were they going to coerce him into giving up? By 1974, the story of the single Japanese soldier still fighting a war that had been over for nearly 30 years was big news back home. Adventurer Norio Suzuki, who was bored with his life in Japan, had grown fascinated by the tale of his fellow countrymen's irrational urge to keep fighting. He made the decision that he wanted to find Onoda. He traveled to Lubang Island and started looking. Amazingly, he discovered him on February 20th. But how was Onoda convinced to surrender? Onoda was ready to kill Suzuki right away. Fortunately, Suzuki had done his study on the soldier and spoke out right away, informing him that the emperor, the people of Japan, and Onoda-san were concerned about him. It was sufficient for Onoda to put his weapon down and pay attention to Suzuki. Suzuki informed him that the conflict had been over for about 30 years. It was time to come home. Of course, Onoda was completely unaffected by this. He told the young man that he would only surrender if his superior officer gave the order to do so. Suzuki left for Japan with a photo of him and Onoda as evidence that the veteran soldier was still alive and healthy. The soldier who had instructed Onoda to stand and fight all those years ago was sought after the authorities learned of the situation. Major Yoshimi Taniguchi was a quiet bookseller by the year 1974, when the Japanese government requested him to travel to the Philippines to take over the duties of a soldier he hadn't seen in 3 decades. He was a little flabbergasted. Taniguchi was flown to Lubang, and on March 9th, he met with Onoda in a forest clearing. He fulfilled his promise made by 1945 by delivering the formal order to stand down. It took longer than the original 5-year estimate. Hiroo Onoda surrendered after 29 years of fighting in World War II on Lubang Island. He handed over his weapons and uniform to President Ferdinand Marcos in Manila and was formally pardoned. Onoda was the second to last Japanese soldier to surrender, with Private Teruo Nakamura being the last to surrender on December 18, 1974. Hiroo Onoda returned to Japan after 30 years to find a modernized country different from the ancient land he had left in 1944. Disillusioned, he moved to Brazil, where he became a successful cattle rancher. In 1984, after reading about a troubled teen, he returned to Japan to set up a school for troubled children. He lived a successful and wealthy life until he died on the 16th of January 2014 at 91 years old. The story of the soldier who continued fighting World War II until 29 years after its end is a reminder of the incredible impact that the war can have on people's lives. It shows how important it is to support those who have served and to ensure that they receive the care and help they need when they return home. We hope this video has shed some light on this fascinating and poignant tale. If you like this and you want to see more about World War II, go check out our video about Nazi scare tactics.